Hi, it's me Olivia. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel for interesting stories and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the comment. Thanks. I lost my father when I was very young, and I lost my mother just recently. I'm only 28, and she was only 53 when she died. It's not fair. I loved her so much. She worked so hard to raise me on her own, and she never got a chance to retire and relax and enjoy life. My father was an insurance salesman, and his life insurance paid off the mortgage on our little house, but other than that we had to get by on my mother's salary as a secretary. There weren't many business opportunities for women back in the 70s. Secretary was the best she could hope for. It broke my mother's heart when she found out her only son was a crossdresser. She came home early one day and caught me in the attic trying on her dresses, and it was the first time I'd ever had the nerve to do it, too. She called me gay and yelled and screamed and made me promise never to wear her dresses ever again. I promised, and I kept my promise because I loved her and I would never want to hurt her, but I knew that when I got out on my own I'd be dressing up again. I know I'm not making her sound like the world's best mother, but believe me, for the most part she was the most kind and loving and patient woman in the world. She had a good heart, and she was generous with her time. She helped a lot of people. And now she was gone, and I was taking a final walk through the house, deciding what to keep before the whole estate was liquidated. I unlocked the door and went up to the attic, where she kept a lot of her old dresses from the 70s, and even a few from the 60s. I had brought some of my own lingerie, and some of my high heels and a wig. Whether it was sacrilegious or disrespectful or worse, I was going to try on all my mother's lovely dresses before I gave them to Goodwill. Some of them I'd never even had a chance to see, let alone try on. The place was immaculate. No dust anywhere. That was my mom. There were a few mannequins and dress forms about the room that she used for alterations, and in one corner were all her beautiful, colorful 70s dresses in plastic garment bags, hanging from a dress rack on rollers. If this were a dress shop, they'd be called vintage dresses, but here they were just old, I guess. These dresses were all mine, now. I could keep them if I wanted to, but I was determined to do the right thing and give them to Goodwill. But until then, they were mine. My mother was known for wearing lovely feminine dresses. It would have required a gun to her head to make her wear pants, or even to make her wear a simple plain brown dress. She gardened in slacks, but other than that I don't seem to remember her ever wearing pants. When she lost her figure, she couldn't wear any of these dresses anymore, but she always saved them and always preserved them well. Before I came along, she was a size 6 dress size, and at the age of 28, I'm proud to say that I'm also a size 6. I took the first dress out of its garment bag. This was one I'd tried on before Mom had taken to locking the attic. I always wanted to ask her about this dress, but of course that wouldn't be a good idea. It didn't look like a dress for a grown-up woman, more like a teenage girl's dress. Too short for an adult woman to wear, even in the 70s. I laid it down on the couch, then quickly took off my clothes. I sat on the couch and took out my panties and pantyhose and put them on. Then my girdle, then a long-line bra. I stuffed falsies into the bra. I didn't put on my satin slip yet because this dress was way too short for it, but I put on my black patent leather high heels that would look stunning with this dress. I never wear makeup because I'm never able to shave all that well, and I look disgusting in makeup. Besides, I never go anywhere or let anyone see me in drag. I put on my brown wig, which happened to look a lot like the way my mother wore her hair. Then I slipped into the dress. I remembered the zipper as being rather difficult, but I finally got it zipped and tied the back tie. I wished there was a full-length mirror in the attic. I looked down at myself in my short, sexy dress. Man, what a head trip. That was really a bummer, you know. I looked up in a panic, afraid some young girl had gotten into the attic. There were 3 teenage girls surrounding me, talking their moronic teenage talk. But I wasn't in the attic anymore. I know. And it used to be, like, so groovy, too. I looked around. I was scared to death. I was in a high school. It wasn't my high school. From the clothes and the hair and the makeup, I would guess it was the 60s, unless this was some school dress-up event. I took a look at the girl directly across from me. Yep, the 60s. When's the last time I saw a teenage girl wearing a dress that short and that colorful? And with its own built-in choker? I saw a little news item about the presidential election someone had stapled up somewhere. Humphrey versus Nixon. So it was 1968? Megan, what's the matter? Why are you spazzing? Megan. My mother's name. The bell rang for class and one of the girls said we had to get going. I'll be right in. Just a minute, I said, in a voice that sounded a little bit like my mother's. I ran off to find a girl's bathroom. I had to get a look at myself. I went in the bathroom and took a look in the mirror. I touched my face, my makeup. I touched my breasts. I felt down below for a penis, but there was none. I was a real teenage girl. This was scary. I wasn't sure I wanted this, even if it meant I got to wear cute dresses all day and no one could say a word about it. I didn't want to start all over again from high school. I looked down at my dress. I still wanted to see myself in a full-length mirror instead of this small bathroom mirror that only showed face and shoulders. I was wearing black patent leather shoes with a low heel. I had on a bra, but I could tell it wasn't a long-line bra. I lifted my skirt and looked. Pantyhose and panties, but no girdle. I didn't even know they had pantyhose in the 60s. Then again, how could you wear a miniskirt without pantyhose? I went into a stall. Instinctively, I started to unzip my dress. Well, if putting it on got me here. And suddenly I was back in the attic, my dress a puddle of fabric on the floor. I laughed. Maybe I was going crazy, but insanity can be pretty entertaining, after all, even to the crazy person. I was back, and I was a 28-year-old man in lingerie, pantyhose, high heels, and a wig. Well, if this is madness, why stop now? I was determined to try on all those dresses, madness or otherwise. I pulled my pretty satin slip over my head, then I replaced my mini dress in the garment bag and hung it up and went looking for a more grown-up dress. I found one I liked, but it was just a little too 60s. I'd had enough of the 60s. I wanted to move on to the 70s. Oh, this one was nice. I loved the color, the tiny stripes, and the ruffles down the front. It was so sheer you'd be able to see my slip. It seemed like it should have had a belt, but I didn't see one, though there were belt loops. I switched to white high heels, then I pulled my dress on over my head and buttoned it up. I made sure to look straight ahead as I fastened the top button. I can't describe how jarring it is to be in a certain location 1 second, and a completely different location the second after that, with nothing in between. No soft focus like in the movies, no twinkling lights like on Star Trek, just click and you're there. And in a somewhat different position, too. I was standing, but my hands were not at my throat buttoning my dress, they were at my sides, one grasping my purse and one holding a notepad. This is your desk. Electric typewriter, adding machine, stationery in the top drawer. You should have everything you need. Don't clutter the desk with a lot of photographs. They don't like that. 1 or 2 are plenty. Any questions? A lady in an ugly brown dress was telling me this. I was in an office setting. Probably my first day on the job. My mom had only had 3 different jobs in her life. She usually stayed with a job as long as they would have her. I looked around. I didn't recognize this office. Any questions? The lady asked, impatiently. Where's the ladies' room? We passed it on the way in. Didn't you see it? Just down the hall and to the right. Don't take too long. There's a lot of work waiting for you. I tossed my notepad and purse onto my desk. I headed for the ladies' room, trying not to look like I was hurrying too much. Walking in high heels was no problem for me. I've had plenty of practice, but never before in public. I work a counter in a department store. I have no secretarial skills whatsoever, and I had no desire to stay in this office any longer than necessary, no matter how much I loved wearing my pretty dress. Just walking down the hallway was a sensual experience, feeling my pantyhose and my slip and my lingerie against my body as I walked, feeling my sheer tight dress move against me, feeling my sleeves billow about my arms, the silky feel of my skirt against my fingers. I felt almost like I was naked, like I was dressed but not dressed, both at once. The men paid attention as I walked by. I looked down at my dress. It was cinched tight with a narrow aqua-colored belt. I looked at my hands, my slender, tapered fingers, my long nails painted red. I took a quick look at a calendar in passing. It was 1972. A thought occurred to me. Was this just a hallucination, or was I really somehow dropped into my mother's life? If I did something wrong, could I get my mother in trouble? Could it somehow have implications for the future? My present? I wasn't even born yet. I went into the ladies' room and took a look at myself. Wow! I knew my mom was beautiful, but wow. Just wow. She'd been a pretty cute teenage girl, but now she was a stunningly gorgeous young woman in her early 20s, in perfect makeup and a gorgeous hairdo. I was that woman. I was her. No wonder I wore such beautiful feminine dresses. I had every reason to. Again, I was stuck with this truncated mirror, but I turned every which way, admiring my dress. A woman in a sweater and skirt came out of the stall behind me and caught me checking myself out. She smiled. "Cute dress," she said. "Thanks," I said, looking down at it. I've never worn it before. I just love wearing it. It's really easy to slip into in the morning. It's so silky and I love the pretty color. Did women really talk that way about their dresses? Well, the woman I was talking to didn't seem to think it odd. "You're new here, aren't you? First day?" "Yes. I'm Megan," I said. "Patty. I wouldn't be wearing a sexy dress like that around here. The bosses will have their hands up your skirt before long." I looked down at my dress. I tugged it down a little to make it more presentable. "I thought this was conservative," I said. "Honey, you can see your slip right through that thing. It's too tight. Just the top." "My skirt isn't tight," I said, twisting back and forth to show her. It wasn't a full skirt, but it wasn't skin tight either. Believe me, honey, the top is what they're going to be looking at. But it's not low cut, is it? And my skirt's not too short. I looked down at myself and held my skirt lightly in both hands, presenting my dress for her inspection. I stood closer to her so that our legs were almost touching and said, "See, your skirt is even shorter than mine. But honey, your dress is so sheer. And that slip. Is it new?" I guessed and said, "Sure is. New slip, new dress, brand new pantyhose, even." I wanted to make a good impression on my first day. I slid up my skirt just a little and stuck out one leg for her to examine, as though anyone could possibly verify that I was wearing brand new pantyhose. Well, I didn't see any snags anyway. "That's a lovely slip, honey, but you know you're going to drive the men wild with all that sexy lace." "Oh, you can't really see all that much, can you?" I said coyly, turning just a bit to the side so she could examine me and my dress a little more closely. I was almost flirting with her, but still she didn't react as though there was a thing wrong with it. Way back when I was a man, I can remember buying dresses mail order and trying them on, and eventually taking them off and hanging them in my closet, wishing that just once I could wear one of them to work, imagining what it would be like to have everyone admiring my pretty dress. And this was a sweet little taste of what I thought it might be like. Spending the first 5 minutes of the day talking about my new dress, every little detail of it, how it felt to wear it, if my skirt was too short, if I was wearing the right slip, the right belt, the right high heels, every little thing. And all the while I would be posing in it, turning this way and that as we discussed my pretty dress endlessly. She shrugged her shoulders and said, "Suit yourself. I guess you'd be sexy in a burlap bag. Who will you be working for?" I was a little disappointed that we were done talking about my dress. "I haven't found that out yet." "Well, best of luck to you, honey," she said, and left. I went into the stall. I had a moment of uncertainty as I unbuckled my belt and started to unbutton the front of my dress. Would this always work? What if I got stuck here? But it worked just fine. I was back in the attic as soon as I got my dress off. I hung it up and went looking for another dress. Oh, this one was cute. Not the most colorful dress in the world, but I loved that smocking in the front. Adult women and teenage girls used to wear dresses that were smocked in the front all the time. A smocked dress really shows off a woman's figure. Now the only dresses that are smocked are for little girls. Why did they abandon smocked dresses for women? And why don't you ever see a woman's dress with a back tie anymore? This dress had a back tie. It makes a dress fit more snugly. All these great fashion ideas have just been abandoned. Why? I stepped into my dress, zipped it halfway up, got the back tie tied in a nice bow, tied the bow at my throat, then reached behind me and zipped up my dress, being careful to keep the hair of my wig out of the way of the zipper. I could have taken my wig off, but that would be cheating. This time I wasn't even standing. I was sitting on a chair with my legs crossed, my notepad atop my skirt. One hand was holding the pad, the other a pen. I paused, not sure what I was supposed to be writing. I looked at the pad and it was all shorthand. I couldn't decipher it. An extremely overweight man with a cheesy mustache, who I assumed was my boss, was spouting some corporate drivel I was meant to be recording. I had no idea what to do, so I waited until he stopped talking. He didn't even notice I'd stopped writing. "Read me back what we have so far," he said. I stood up. "I'm really sorry, sir, but I need to go to the ladies' room. I'll be right back." I left the office, paying no attention to his miffed expression, and dropped my pen and paper on my desk, heading for the ladies' room. This routine was getting a little repetitive, but what was I supposed to do? Take off my dress in the hallway? Or tell my boss, "Excuse me, sir, I just have to take off my dress because I'm really a man from about 30 years in the future, and as soon as I take off my dress I will time travel, though you won't actually notice anything happening. So goodbye, and if you ever see a stock for sale called Microsoft, just invest everything you've got. Could you unzip me, please?" I tried to hurry, but I was feeling a little bloated and irritable. I noticed the effect I had on the men in the office as I hurried down the hall, many of them stopping what they were doing to take a look at me. They all smiled at me. To a beautiful woman, it seems like the whole world is on Prozac. Everyone smiles at her constantly. I smiled back, just to be polite. My smocked dress had a fuller skirt, but it wasn't as silky as my light blue dress, and my skirt didn't feel as nice rubbing against my fingers. But I did enjoy the way the smocking about the bodice gripped me snugly. Walking past a couple of good-looking middle-aged men, I noticed that they were checking out my breasts. Now, as a man, I've taken a quick peek at a woman's cleavage now and again, but that's all it was, a quick peek. These men were just staring, and it pissed me off. I know that the smocking of my dress accentuated the curvature of my breasts, and it's one thing for a man to take a quick peek, but these men were just staring. I even looked directly at them, and still they didn't stop. I thought about what my mother would do. Would she say anything? She hardly ever lost her temper. I decided that she might say something, but she'd try to use some humor to defuse the situation. I walked right up to them, laughing a little, and said, "Boys, I'm not even wearing a low-cut dress. Come on, now." I held my skirt with both hands as though I was about to curtsy, presenting my cute dress to them so they could see it wasn't low-cut. They pretended not to know what I was talking about. "I know, sure, you're just admiring how nicely I tied my bow," I said, fingering my throat. "I better not wear any of my low-cut dresses around you too, or you'll be, like," and here I leaned forward just a bit before one of the men, my eyes at the level of his chest, about where I thought his nipples would be. My hands were on my knees atop my skirt, the ends of my bow dangling from my dress as I examined his chest with mock seriousness. They laughed. I switched my gaze from one nipple to another as the dangling ends of my bow flipped back forth a bit, just below my throat. I was letting them know how ridiculous and inappropriate they were being, just as I had called them boys to let them know how immature they were. They laughed some more. Some of the other secretaries started watching my performance. Finally, the men both apologized and said that they hadn't meant anything by it. I straightened up. I really should have left it at that, but sometimes I just don't know when to leave well enough alone. I reached behind me and put my hands on my buttocks, threw back my shoulders, and thrust out my breasts. "Have we seen everything we need to see?" I asked, still good-naturedly. "All through." They said they were, and I noticed that they scrupulously maintained eye contact, even though I was thrusting my breasts at them. That would have been it, but as I was leaving, one of them said, "How about your nice legs, Megan? Do we still get to check out your legs?" I sighed. "Sure. They're in plain view, aren't they? Feast your eyes, boys." I lifted my skirt for them, just a little. It was a stupid thing to do around these men, not to mention the others who were looking on, and I realized it as soon as I did it, but I couldn't stop once I started. I kept showing off my legs, posing this way and that, hoping to rattle them. Things that are covered up for a reason, boys. Things that aren't covered up, you can look at. Like your slip? And I realized, too late, that I'd only lifted up my skirt. My slip was showing. I let go of my skirt and brushed it down, trying unsuccessfully not to reveal how embarrassed I was. And then I had to go, losing my temper. You like my slip, don't you? Why don't I bring in one of my slips tomorrow, and you can look at all you want. Get it out of your system. You know, I think you boys wouldn't bother looking at my legs if I went bare-legged all day. So it's really my pantyhose you like staring at. Why don't I bring in some pantyhose for you to look at too? I was still trying to smile as I said this, like it was all just a big joke. One of the men said, "How about you wear a nice mini dress tomorrow and we can see even more? Or one of those low-cut dresses you mentioned." They were just goading me, reminding that they could say anything they wanted to me because they were the bosses and I was just a woman. It was making it more and more difficult for me to remain good-humored. I stood closer to the men. I tried not to sound as angry as I was. As before, I presented my dress to them by holding my skirt with both hands as though I was about to curtsy. So let's see, my dress isn't low-cut enough for you, and my skirt's not short enough. Is there anything else you boys don't like about my dress? How about the color? Do you like the color? You boys are awfully interested in my dresses all of a sudden. I think we're interested in what's inside your dress. Well, boys, if I were you, I'd be more interested in my dresses than what's inside them. Because my dresses are the only thing you'll ever get to see. They weren't smiling. I turned away. Damn it. I blew it. I'd handled it so well, just like my mother would have done. Then I had to lift my skirt, and they lost all respect for me. And then they made me lose my temper. Now those sickos would stare at my mom's breasts all the time. They'd make a point of it. I couldn't leave it like that. These men could make it tough for my mother. They could demote her or worse. But a beautiful woman has a certain authority all her own. I turned back to them before I'd gone more than a few steps. I lowered my voice as I spoke so the onlookers couldn't hear. Listen, boys, I didn't mean to say that. I know you were just kidding around. I was just kidding too, lifting my skirt and all. I put a lot of time and trouble into my appearance, and of course I want you to look at me, but not like that. There's a right way and a wrong way to look at a woman, and staring at my you-know is the wrong way. I nearly looked down at my you-know as I spoke, but that would have caused them to look at my breasts too, which was what I was trying to stop. I continued. I know I'm just a secretary, but you don't have to treat me like that. A quick look is one thing, but that was just a little ridiculous. And if you want to compliment me, I'd much rather you tell me I look nice today, or I'm wearing a cute dress than telling me I've got nice legs. Okay. They nodded. Megan, one of them said as I turned to go. Yes, you're wearing a cute dress. I smiled, returning the smiles to their faces. Just for fun, I curtsied to them. Thank you, gentlemen, I said, conferring adulthood on them. If you men behave yourselves, I might actually buy myself a low-cut dress one day. Maybe even wear it. When I got into the ladies' room, I took a quick look at myself in the mirror. I noticed that my mom had tied the bow at my throat a lot nicer than I'd originally tied it. It made me realize that I could have tied the bow before I even put on my dress and done a much better job that way. I made up my mind to do that in the future, but for now I had to time travel before I got my mother into any more trouble. I reached behind my back and untied the back tie, reached for my zipper, and was quickly out of my dress. And I was back in the attic, my dress at my feet. I sat down on the couch, being careful not to wrinkle my slip. Should I really continue this? I've never wanted to be a woman. I've always been happy being a man. But at the same time, I've always thought how great it would be, wearing cute dresses in public. I've finally had a taste of that, and I wanted more. How many men have ever been privileged to know what it's really like to be a woman? Not just to impersonate a woman, but to really be one. How could I just throw that away? But maybe I should learn some shorthand or typing skills before I went back. No, the heck with it. My mom's not going to get fired because she has to take off for the ladies' room occasionally. But come on, there had to be something more to my mom's life than the office. I stood and picked my dress up off the floor. I put it back in its garment bag and hung it up and looked for another dress. The smocked dress just wasn't colorful enough for me. I wanted to find a dress that was tight and sexy, but also had a stunning color to it. A dress that no one could forget if they saw it even once. I gasped when I saw that beautiful midnight blue dress. It was an Asian style, meaning it had a side zipper and snaps that went diagonally from my side to my neck. I'd worn one of those Asian-style dresses before. I knew this dress would probably be skin-tight, but it'd also be a tremendous pain to put on. It looked like satin to me, but the label said polyester. I thought, hopefully, that this dress might be a little too formal to wear to work. But knowing my mother, I doubted it. I switched back to black high heels, then I wriggled into my dress and got my arms into the short sleeves. I tugged down my slip, then I zipped up the side zipper and started on the snaps. Fastening snaps with one hand, without a mirror to allow you to see what you're doing and without a hard surface to press against, is not easy. It takes 2 or 3 tries for each snap. Finally, I got most of them done, but the snap at the top was the worst, because I have a male neck which was a little too thick for this dress. Eventually, I got it snapped, but the neck pinched me something awful. Once again, I was back at the office. Damn. But I immediately felt more comfortable around the neck area. The collar fit my throat much better. I appeared to be in the coffee room, a tiny room not big enough for much more than a refrigerator, a water cooler, a percolator, and a sink. My gosh, a big old percolator. I hadn't seen one of those in decades. I was holding down the little toggle switch, and coffee was flowing into my coffee mug. I'm glad I noticed, before it started overflowing. I took my finger off the toggle switch and put my mug on the counter. I looked at the clock. It was 7:30. It looked like evening. I was apparently working late. Great. I looked down at my dress. It was as tight and shiny and sexy as I expected it to be. A little bit of light was actually reflecting off of it onto the wall. And when I walked, my skirt rose and fell with every step. I reached for my coffee when a man I didn't recognize came into the coffee room. His bulky frame filled the door. Hiya, baby. How you doing? Working late? Any guy with a wedding ring who greets a secretary with, hiya, baby, is trouble. I left my coffee where it was and tried to get past him. Whoa. Don't be so hasty there, Megan. We're practically the only ones in the whole building. Don't be shy. I'm not shy. Get out of my way. Come on now, Megan. Don't be that way. He was edging forward, cornering me against the refrigerator and the wall. What are you doing? I asked nervously. Come on, Megan. You've been wanting this for a while now. Don't play innocent. You can't go flaunting your body in that tight dress and play innocent with me. Never mind my dress. Let me go. The next thing I knew, he had one hand my rear end and another on my breast. He was trying to kiss me. I put a hand on his mouth. I tried to push him away, but I didn't have the strength. I felt sick. I felt like I wanted to vomit. He started touching my back, feeling for the back zipper on my dress, which wasn't there. Come on, girl, he said. I'm not a girl. I'm a grown woman. You can't treat me this way. I struggled in his grasp. Someday there will be laws against men like you. This made him laugh so much he lost his grip on me. I slipped out of his grasp and got out of the coffee room, leaving my mug behind. I would have liked to pick it up and throw the coffee in his face, but I couldn't get my mother in trouble. Still, I refused to believe that even my mother could control her temper in that situation. I looked down at my dress. A few snaps had come undone. Listen here, I said before fleeing. I can wear a tight dress to work if I want to. This dress I'm wearing is not an invitation to grope me or paw my breasts. You hear me? He laughed and made a mock lunge at me. But I was so nervous I took it for the real thing. I jumped back, almost losing my balance, and got away from him, his mocking laughter behind me. I tried to run, but in my tight dress, all I could do was walk fast and, unfortunately, with a little bit of a wiggle. I couldn't help it in that dress. Yeah, shake it, baby, he yelled. I colored with indignation and embarrassment, but I kept going. Damn him. He was actually making me embarrassed to be wearing a dress. I'm a woman, damn it. He can't do this to me. I broke out into a cold sweat as I fled. It felt as if my legs were sweating through my pantyhose as I hurried along. I felt like crying, but I didn't. I didn't want to give that creep the satisfaction. I realized now why my mom had spent so much time and effort teaching me to respect women. Get to the ladies' room and get out of here. But I couldn't find the ladies' room. Nothing looked familiar to me from the last time I was there. I couldn't even find my own desk. Either I was so traumatized I didn't know what I was doing, or maybe I'd moved to another floor. Finally, I realized that to get to the ladies' room, I was probably going to have to go back the way I came and encounter that pig again, and I wasn't about to do that. I just couldn't wait a second longer to take off my blue dress and get away from that maniac, and I hated the fact that I was wearing such a beautiful, sexy, tight dress, and the only thing I could think of was slipping out of it as soon as possible. All because of this lousy office and the brutes who work here. I took a quick look around the place. I didn't see any other employees. I started pulling at the snaps on my dress. Luckily, my dress was a dozen times easier to get off than it was to put on. All of a sudden, there was a man turning the corner and heading right toward me, and me with my dress half off. I jumped into an empty office and shut the door before he could get a good look at me. I flipped the switch to turn on the overhead light and ran around behind the desk. I was about to slip out of my dress when I looked down and saw that there was a small invasion of ants taking place right near the desk leg. I wasn't about to take off my dress next to a bunch of ants. My poor mother had enough to deal with without getting ants in her pantyhose. I ran around to the other side of the desk, near the door, listening to make sure that the man outside had passed by. I finished unsnapping my dress, and I unzipped the side zipper. I noticed that my slip was askew, due to being manhandled by that brute. I want to go back to being a man, I mumbled as I wriggled out of my dress. It's no fun being a woman in the 70s. I was back in the attic, breathing heavily. I sat down again. Damn, I didn't even have a chance to see myself in the mirror this time. Was this some punishment from heaven above for wearing dresses? I couldn't believe my mom actually had to go through this kind of crap. She always seemed so cheerful. There had to be something better than this in her life. One more time. One more dress. If something positive didn't happen this time, I was quitting. Whatever came next couldn't possibly be worse than being groped by that son of a bitch. I hung the dress up in its garment bag. I wanted a brightly colored dress. I wanted one with colors that just pop. The midnight blue was stunning enough, but it was a dark color, and I wanted something bright. I was sure my mom had some really pretty dresses with bright colors here. I looked for one. Oh my gosh, look at this dress. Oh, this was the one. What beautiful colors. Dusky pink, with a tulip design and a pleated skirt. I don't know what my mom thought she was doing with that ugly rope belt, though. The dress had obviously lost the original belt, but I'd rather wear it unbelted than with that ugly thing. I switched to white high heels, then I put on my dress and zipped it up, fully expecting to wind up back at the office, and I was pleasantly surprised to find myself pushing a cart at the grocery store. I never thought I'd be delighted to be in a grocery store, but it was Disney World compared to that office. I looked down at my dress. I was wearing a sash of the same fabric as my dress, tied in a nice bow. The pleated skirt was nice and comfortable, and it flowed as I walked. I was wearing high heels. I wondered if there was another woman in the entire place who put on high heels to go to the grocery store. I looked down at a can of peas I had apparently dropped. I was about to bend at the knees and pick it up when a man in a white shirt and tie reached down and got it for me. Here you go. Thanks, I said as I took the can from him. Then I got a good look at him, and my eyes popped wide open with astonishment. Oh my gosh, it was my father. Even younger than I am now, but there was no mistaking him. I stammered as I tried to say something to him. I was about all I got out. He smiled charmingly. Cute dress, he said. He was as good-looking as I remembered from my childhood. Thanks, I said. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. I felt like running away from him as fast as my high heels would take me, but I thought, what if this is their first meeting? I saw Back to the Future. If I blow it, what if they never get together? What becomes of me? Stealing my courage, I said, listen, I'm in a bit of a hurry. It's obvious that you're attracted to me and I'm attracted to you, so why don't I just give you my phone number and you can call me sometime? He was rather taken aback by this, but he said, okay. I took my wallet out of my purse and held it up for him to see. My mother had actually filled out the little identification card in the wallet, including her phone number. "I just moved," I said. "Here's my number." He didn't have pen or paper, so I lent him both. He copied it down, and I wheeled away from him, my heart racing. I didn't waste any time with the rest of my shopping list. I went right to the checkout stand. Checking out took longer than I thought it would, because grocery stores didn't have price scanners back then. As I stood in line, I took a look at some of the other women. No high heels and very few skirts. Those that wore skirts didn't bother with pantyhose. It looked like it was the middle of the afternoon, so I figured it must be the weekend. A glance at a newspaper stand on the way out confirmed that it was Saturday. My mom had put on a pretty dress, high heels, and pantyhose to go to the grocery store on a Saturday, and I had no doubt my face was beautifully made up as well. I looked through my purse for something to give me a clue as to which car was mine. I found an insurance card with my license plate number on it, then I found my car. I put the groceries in the back. I had never gotten into a car while wearing a dress before, but I knew how to do it from observation. I sat down, then swiveled my legs into the car with one hand holding my skirt. I shut the door, still being careful of my skirt. This was the town I grew up in, so I had no problem finding my mom's small apartment, once I reminded myself of the address from my driver's license. I parked somewhere, not even bothering to find the right spot, then I carried my groceries to my apartment. The wind was whipping up, blowing my pleated skirt around as I walked with my arms full of heavy bags of groceries. A man, passing by, said, "Pardon, your slip is showing." This remark pissed me off no end. Like I couldn't feel my skirt whipping about? What was I supposed to do about it with my arms full of bags? I angrily remarked, "Listen, if you want to look at my slip, go ahead and look. I only paid $5 for it, but if I drop these bags, I'm out $20 damn dollars." I had no idea what my mom had paid for the slip I was wearing. For all I knew, it cost more than the groceries. The man left, looking abashed, and I chastised myself again for losing my temper and swearing. My mother never swore. I needed to remember to act like a lady and to talk like a woman. Mom would have been very sweet with that man, and probably gotten him to carry her groceries to her apartment. Maybe even put them away for her as well. I got to the apartment and put away all the groceries. I took out a Coke and opened it. I sat down for a moment at the kitchen table. Then I realized I'd completely forgotten to sit like a woman. I stood up and sat again, tucking my skirt under my thighs properly with one hand, and crossed my legs. Oh, it was so easy to cross my legs. No discomfort whatsoever. I finished the Coke, then got up and threw the can in the trash basket under the sink. I went into my bedroom. Finally a full-length mirror. I enjoyed my appearance for a while, curtsying and twirling. I really did look adorable in my pretty pink dress. Why don't women wear dresses like this anymore? Try finding a new dress this cute and colorful nowadays. They just don't make them like this anymore. Sometime in the 80s, or maybe even before, when women decided they were going to get serious about climbing the corporate ladder, they must have decided to forget all about wearing feminine, brightly colored dresses. But my mom never forgot. She bemoaned the state of couture, the lack of bright colors and feminine frocks for larger women, until the day she died. I took a quick look through some of my mother's dresses in her bedroom closet. She had a lot more of them than she had saved in the attic. Taking a look at some of them, I understood why. I suppose they were all right for their time, but to me they just looked like clown costumes. I sat down on the bed, tucking my skirt beneath me properly, and thought for a bit. What to do next? I'm a woman and I don't have to worry about going to work or taking dictation for a while. What to do before I sent myself back? I thought of taking in a movie, but what would be the difference between going to a movie as a woman or as a man? What should I do? Go to a bar and let guys pick me up? I'm not gay. I thought about how far I could let myself go in experiencing some of the pleasures of being a woman. I thought about possibly kissing my father. I'm not gay. But it wouldn't be gay, would it? I'm a woman. And he's my father. He's a good man. My mother loved him. I loved him. I decided to just let myself see how I felt about it if the situation ever came up. But I couldn't keep dashing away from him. I had to control myself. I had to do things the way my mother would do them. I was wearing her dress, borrowing her life, and I had to respect her way of doing things, even if I was only guessing half the time. What else could I do before I sent myself back? I had heard that a woman's orgasm is pretty intense. A man's orgasm is nothing compared to it. I wouldn't have to take off my dress. Just pull down my panties and pantyhose. I reached for my zipper and unzipped my dress quickly, ashamed of myself for even thinking such a thing. My own mother. I was back in the attic. I smiled. That wasn't bad, getting to see my father again. I hoped there was more of it. I hung up my pretty pink dress and looked for something else to wear. I wasn't really in the mood for another pink floral dress, but I found one I just couldn't resist. Even prettier than the last one. I loved the colors. It was the easiest dress in the world to put on. It slipped right over my head and fit like a dream. No snaps, no zippers, no problems. I found myself sitting down, my hands in the process of tucking my skirt beneath me. My father was helping me with my chair, being a gentleman. I smiled at him. His suit was laughable by today's standards. The lapels were too wide and the color was hideous, but he was so good-looking that none of that mattered. "Thank you, Gordon," I said. We were in a fancy restaurant. Hey, we were on a date. I guess I hadn't screwed things up too badly between us. As we started talking, it became apparent that this was our first date. We were both on first date behavior. And I got an opportunity to ask my dad all sorts of questions about things I'd been wondering for years. I almost slipped up and called him Dad a few times, but for the most part one was who I was supposed to be. I laughed at his jokes, I smiled, I flirted with him a little bit, and most of it wasn't an act. He was so cute and charming, he made it easy. I found myself falling for him a little. As a woman. I swear, there was a moment there when I forgot I was ever a man. After dinner, the band started up the dance music. He stood and held out a hand to me. I took it, uncrossed my legs, and allowed him to help me to my feet. We went out to the dance floor, and I never felt a second's anxiety about the fact that I'd never danced backwards like a woman, that I'd never danced in a dress, that I'd never danced with a man. He took me in his arms and guided me across the floor. He made it all so easy. I wished I'd been wearing a dress with a fuller skirt, but other than that it was a perfect evening. He took me home and walked me to the door. And I wanted to kiss him. I wanted to kiss him so much. But if my mother was telling the truth about herself, it wasn't what she would do on a first date. He asked if he could come inside. I told him no, but I was looking forward to our next date. He tried to kiss me and I gave him my cheek. He opened the door for me and I went inside. I leaned against the door, breathing heavily. My gosh, I was actually wet. My panties were wet. I danced myself into the bedroom and threw myself on the bed. I grabbed a pillow and stuck it under my chin and pointed one leg in the air. I didn't have to think about any of this. It just came naturally. I lay there, thinking of Gordon. Eventually, I had to get up and go to the bathroom. But I could do that without taking my dress off. I looked at the time. It was late. I remembered hearing that it was Thursday, and I had to get up and go to work tomorrow. "I'm sleeping in my dress," I said aloud. After wearing it all night, it felt like it was a part of me. I just wasn't ready to take it off yet. The alarm clock was set for 6. I made sure the alarm was on, then I turned off the light and climbed into bed. In my dress. And my pantyhose. And my high heels. Wearing makeup. I wondered vaguely what my dreams would be like, but I was a man in my dreams. The alarm went off. I woke up, wondering at my odd dreams. I got out of bed, trying to figure out why in the world I'd gone to sleep in my dress, getting it all wrinkled. Now it would have to be dry cleaned. That was some date, I said aloud. I lifted my skirt and pulled my dress off, right over my head. It was quite a shock. It was quite a shock to be back in the attic and to realize I was really a man. All those times I'd raced to the ladies' room to take off my dress, all those times I was relieved to be back here, and now I was sad. All of a sudden, I wanted to be a woman. I knew I could just go put on another dress, but for the first time ever I wanted to be a woman, completely and permanently. I raced to hang up my dress and get another one. The odd thing was, not all that much time seemed to have passed in the attic. I'd spent half a day in my pink floral dress, but in the attic it was still mid-afternoon. Yeah, that's the odd thing. I'm time traveling, changing genders, falling in love with my father, but the odd thing is that it's still mid-afternoon. Right. I looked through my dresses, trying to find one that was too formal to wear to work. And then I found an adorable print dress, with ruffles and tiny dots and little butterflies and a cute little bow at the collar. Oh, this was so feminine. This gets a 10 on my femininity scale. The material was a little coarse, but apart from that it was a dream dress. I took a close look at the bow. I thought it was something I'd have to untie before I could put on the dress, but when I unbuttoned the top I saw that the cute little bow was pre-tied and that it was attached to just one side of the collar. How clever. It didn't look like a dress for a date. I could easily imagine my mother wearing it to work, but I didn't care. I had to try it on. Even if it meant going back to that crummy office full of lecherous creeps. I unbuttoned the dress and stepped into it. I pulled it up and got my arms into the sleeves, adjusted my slip, tied the sash into a nice bow, and buttoned it up. I was back at the office, walking down the hall towards my desk, my arms full of folders. At least it was the middle of the day. I didn't have to worry about some creep playing grab-ass. Even in the 70s, men wouldn't try something like that in front of everyone. I stopped, checking out a young woman coming towards me. Very pretty, though not as pretty as me, but it was her dress I couldn't take my eyes off of. Wow, cute dress, I said as she came near. I said the words without thinking. I was getting used to being the woman who wore the prettiest dress in the room, and now here I was drooling over another woman's dress and wishing I could wear it. She did that feminine thing where you look down at yourself, as though you completely forgot you were wearing a pretty dress. She looked up and grasped her skirt with one hand to display her dress proudly. Thanks, she said. Before you came to work here, I never would have had the nerve to wear something this colorful. This is my tribute to you, Megan. Well, if you want to pay tribute, don't wear dresses that look better than mine. I don't have anything that pretty. Where'd you get it? It was a gift. It's gorgeous. It fits you perfectly. Not really. The waist is too high. See, my actual waist is down here, and she pointed to her side, about an inch below where the waist of the dress was, and this sash keeps wanting to creep down to where my waist is. I have to keep adjusting it all day. Well, it's worth the trouble. You know what I say, if wearing a dress was easy, they'd let men do it, I said, quoting my mom. Where'd you get the pinwheel? Oh, I was just going to put this in the barrel downstairs. Toys for tots, you know. Oh, right. I've got to get something for that. There was an awkward moment which indicated the conversation was over, so she told me she had to be going and headed off down the hall. I took one last look at her in that pretty dress, wishing like anything I could try it on, a feeling I was used to as a man, but one I never expected to experience as a woman. As she left, I realized I had no idea what her name was. I was a little disappointed she hadn't thought to compliment my dress a little. I was getting used to being on the receiving end of compliments. Good thing my desk was nearby. I got to my desk and put down the folders, not sure what to do with them next. This was usually my cue to get to the ladies' room and make my exit. I straightened my dress and made off to find the ladies' room. I remembered the last time I was here, running around like a crazy woman, trying to find the ladies' room. What was difficult to find before, when I was so traumatized I could hardly think straight, was quite easy to find now. Still, I gave an involuntary shudder as I passed that little coffee room. Two women followed me into the ladies' room, one in a brown dress, one in black. The one in brown carried a clipboard. Before I got into the stall, they overtook me and shoved the clipboard into my hands. Megan, sign this. I looked at the document. It was a petition about the dress code. It asked that women be allowed to wear pants to work. I giggled. I vaguely remembered my mother talking about this once, and all I could remember about the story was that she wouldn't sign it. So I handed it back. No thank you, I said. Megan, don't make trouble. This is important. Oh, you want to wear pants so that makes it important? It's not just the pants. It's terrible the way they treat us here. We have to stand up for our rights. We need to start somewhere. I laughed. That's a lousy place to start. Do you really think if we all start to dress like men that'll make everything fine? We have no female executives working for this company. Not a one. We will have one eventually, and do you think she'll be climbing the corporate ladder in blue jeans? Men and women have to wear business attire to compete in the corporate world, and business attire isn't supposed to be comfortable. You know that. You show that petition to management, they'll laugh in your face. If they do, we'll all come to work wearing pants, all on the same day. They can't fire all of us. I don't have any pants. Besides, I like wearing dresses. I like being a woman. Megan, we have to stand together. Don't cross us. What, are you going to break my arm? Are we the mafia, now? Megan, do you know what the men see when they look at you? How can they take any of us seriously when you go around dressed like a little girl? And now you've even got Marcy dressing like you. Marcy? Oh, the pinwheel girl. Right. I don't dress like a little girl, I said, straightening my dress with dignity. Oh, please. Look at you. You should have a white pinafore with that dress. Now, that's not fair, said the woman in black who'd been silent up till now, but a look from the woman in brown silenced her. There's nothing wrong with wearing something pretty to work, I said as I opened the stall door. I'm not ashamed to be feminine. Excuse me, I need to pee. I think this conversation is over. I closed the door, but the woman with the clipboard wasn't done. She kept on with her tirade. I couldn't get my dress off fast enough. I was back in the attic, wishing I could find a dress that my mom wouldn't be wearing to work. I was really getting tired of that office. I couldn't imagine how my mother could stand it there. It wasn't bad enough being groped by the men, but now the women were harassing me. I took a quick look, trying to find that pretty multicolored dress that Marcy had been wearing, hoping maybe my mother had managed to find it in a dress store somewhere. If I knew my mother, she lusted after that dress as much as I did. But it was nowhere to be found. So I picked out a sexy short yellow dress with a floral pattern. My mom didn't usually wear dresses this short, and I hoped this one was too short to wear to work. I put it on and tied the back tie in a nice bow. And I was back at work. I was in the lunchroom, which was just a room with tables and chairs and a refrigerator to hold salads and drinks, and a microwave to heat up soups and sandwiches and the like. There were microwaves back in the 70s, but they weren't yet affordable enough for the average person to buy them for the home. I looked around. It was mainly women with their lunch in brown bags, sitting and eating and talking. A few men, but so young they were almost boys. I noticed another woman passing by me in a pretty mint-colored close-fitting dress with a back tie. It was short, but not as short as mine, and we were still the only women in sexy, brightly colored dresses in the whole room. I looked down at my dress. I was dangerously sexy in this dress. Not just short, it was tight-fitting and low-cut. Hadn't my mother learned anything from wearing that tight midnight blue Asian dress? Oh well, after I told off those boys who were staring at my breasts, I did tell them I might wear a low-cut dress someday if they behaved. A woman across from me was saying, "What is it with these men?" I kept telling him, "Just stop and ask directions." Why won't they ask directions? Why won't you ever bring a map when you go anywhere? And why can't you spend more than 5 minutes looking for an address before you bother a complete stranger, I thought. But I didn't say it. This whole argument was old and pointless even back in the 70s, and I didn't want to get involved. I was sitting at one corner of the table with my legs crossed, eating a tuna fish sandwich. I hate tuna fish, and I almost spat it out, but I managed to choke down one bite of it. I looked around for something to drink. All that was available was some coffee in a styrofoam cup, perched right near the edge of the table. I reached for it, just as that woman who'd been bothering me about the petition walked by. And what happened next I'd never believe if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. She reached out with a ballpoint pen and flipped the cup of hot coffee right onto my lap. Ow! I yelled as I stood up. It really hurt. The coffee had scalded my legs. Oops. Sorry, she said as I did my best to wipe off my dress and my legs. I did a little dance of pain. You did that on purpose. I yelled as more women stopped talking and paid attention. It was an accident, she said. Gee, if only you'd been wearing pants. Someone offered me a cold can of Coke. I held it against my left leg, being careful not to slosh any of it on my pantyhose, which were wet enough already. You bitch, I said quietly, and limped to the ladies' room, still holding the can against my left leg, which hurt the most. When I got to the ladies' room, I put the can on the counter and grabbed a few paper towels to dry my legs some more. I had to be careful drying them because they really hurt and I could see red blotches on them. I was afraid I'd regret wearing a mini dress to work, but I didn't think another woman would be the one to make me regret it. I finished drying my legs, then I picked up the can of Coke and applied it to my right leg for a while. When I felt a little better, I put down the can and leaned against the wall. I glanced toward the bathroom stall and decided that nothing was keeping me here. Before I could enter the stall, several women came into the ladies' room, bringing my attacker with them. She hadn't come willingly. Some of the women were nudging her, trying to persuade her to talk. "All right," she said. "I'm sorry." "I already said I was sorry." "You did it on purpose," I said. "Admit it." "Fine, I admit it." "You deserve it, going around in a dress like that. Don't you put on enough of a show already? This is because I wouldn't sign your stupid petition, isn't it? Are you going to sign it now? What do you think?" "You'd better," she said, and turned to go. Several women left with her. One stayed behind to offer me a spare pair of pantyhose if I needed them. "Wait a minute. Come back here," I said, and all the women returned, taking my attacker with them. "Your stupid petition isn't going to make a bit of difference in this company," I said. "You want me to sign something, I'll tell you what I'll sign. Get up a petition for Casual Fridays and I'll sign that." Casual Fridays? On Friday, men and women can wear whatever they want, including jeans and sneakers. We'll have to make sure we have no clients in the building on Friday, but that shouldn't be a problem. Get men and women both to sign it and we'll see if it works. A lot of the women looked doubtful. One said she'd never heard of a company doing that before. "Then we'll make history," I said. "Anyway, it's got a better chance than any permanent change to the dress code. And it doesn't make a special case for us because we're women." My attacker didn't want to do it, but some of the other women thought it was worth a shot. I didn't wait around any longer. I got into the bathroom stall and unzipped my dress. Back in the attic, I hoped I'd made a small difference. At least, hoped that woman wouldn't be trying to injure my mother anymore. I checked out my legs, and they were fine. No red blotches. I picked out another floral dress. The colors in this one weren't as bright as in some of the other ones, but it intrigued me because it was another Asian-style dress, with snaps. As difficult as these dresses were to put on, they felt nice and snug on my body. Not even thinking about my negative experience with the midnight blue dress, I put it on. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Thanks.